Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're taking you back in time to Victorian London, but not through a history book or a documentary. Buckle up, because we're going to be using a board game called Nanty Narking as our guide.
This game isn't your typical roll the dice and collect properties kind of game. It's a journey into the underbelly of Victorian London, a glimpse into its intricate social fabric and power struggles.
Oh, so like a historical simulation then?
Exactly, and the game board itself gives us our first clue. It's divided into 12 distinct areas of London, each with a different cost of building. The city, for instance, is the priciest, mirroring its real-life status as a hub for the wealthy and powerful. Then you have areas like the East End, notoriously known for its poverty and crime, where the cost of building is significantly lower.
That's a clever way to highlight the stark economic disparities that existed in Victorian London. You're immediately forced to think about the different social classes and their access to power.
And that's just the beginning. As you delve deeper into the game, you realize that Nanty Narking is less about accumulating property and more about embodying influential figures, kind of like stepping into the shoes of these larger-than-life personalities from Victorian literature and history.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these personalities. Who are some of the key players in this game of Victorian power struggles?
You could play as one of the ambitious lords vying for control. Lord Holdhurst, Lord Bellinger, or Lord Balmoral. The aristocracy, the elite class in Victorian society, held a significant amount of power. And these lords represent their relentless pursuit of land ownership and political influence.
Sounds like a clash of egos just waiting to happen.
Oh, absolutely. Each lord has their own specific goals and strategies, mirroring the cutthroat competition among the aristocracy. Lord Holdhurst, for example, focuses on dominating key areas, like the city and Westminster, while Lord Bellinger aims for a wider spread of influence controlling as many areas as possible.
So it's a battle between strategic focus and widespread control. What about someone who doesn't play by the rules? Say, a cunning criminal mastermind.
Ah, you're talking about Fagin. He represents the criminal element that thrived in the shadows of Victorian society. Unlike the lords, he's not interested in land ownership or political power. His goal is much darker: to turn London into a city of sin.
That's a chilling thought. What does that look like in the game?
In Nanty Narking, Fagin wins if there are 8 trouble markers on the board at the start of his turn.
Trouble markers. What are those exactly?
Imagine them as representations of unrest, poverty, and crime. All the challenges that plagued Victorian London. They can pop up anywhere, making the city feel volatile and unpredictable.
So it's like the game is constantly reminding you that even in the most affluent areas, you are never too far from the darker realities of Victorian life.
Exactly. And Fagin's victory condition highlights a chilling reality of that era. For some, London's descent into chaos was not something to be avoided, but a breeding ground for their own ambitions. The worse things got, the better it was for them.
That's a stark contrast to someone like Sherlock Holmes, who I assume is all about maintaining order.
Absolutely. Sherlock represents the forces of good, the champion of justice trying to keep the city from succumbing to chaos. His goal in the game is to prevent anyone else, particularly someone like Fagin, from achieving their objective. He's essentially trying to maintain the status quo to protect London from succumbing to its darker impulses.
Now, this game sounds like it's starting to get complicated, but what about someone who isn't interested in controlling areas or inciting chaos? What if they're just in it for the money?
Ah, then you might be interested in playing as Monsieur de Sidonia. He's a shrewd financier obsessed with wealth accumulation. His presence in the game highlights the rising influence of money and finance in shaping Victorian London's destiny.
So he's a representation of the growing capitalist class focused on profit above all else.
Precisely. His victory condition revolves around reaching a certain net worth, which includes his cash and the value of any buildings he owns. This mirrors how money was becoming increasingly intertwined with power and influence during this period.
It sounds like Nanty Narking does a fantastic job of capturing the complexities of Victorian London. We've got ambitious aristocrats, a cunning criminal mastermind, a champion of justice, and now a shrewd financier. Is there anyone else who adds to this intricate mix?
Oh, there are plenty more colorful personalities waiting to be discovered. But before we dive into that, let's talk about something that makes this game even more exciting: the element of chance and unpredictability.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity. What makes Nanty Narking so unpredictable?
Well, just like in real life, Victorian London, unexpected events can occur that throw a wrench into your carefully crafted plans. The game includes these random events that reflect the very real dangers and uncertainties that Londoners face in their daily lives.
So are we talking fires, floods, maybe even a cholera outbreak?
Cholera outbreaks were a real concern in Victorian London, but thankfully not something you have to worry about in the game. But you could face a zeppelin crash landing in Southwark, a devastating fire sweeping through the city, or even a mysterious murder that throws everyone off balance.
Wow, those sound dramatic. What happens when one of these random events strikes?
Each random event card has specific instructions on how it affects the game. For example, with the zeppelin crash, you roll a die to determine where the airship plummets, and anything in that area, ponds, buildings, those trouble markers we talked about, are wiped out.
Yikes. Sounds like a bad time to have invested in that area.
Indeed. And then there's the flood card, where you roll to see which areas along the Thames are inundated. It really captures that precariousness of life in Victorian London, where even the grandest plans could be washed away in an instant.
So it's not just about controlling areas, but adapting to sudden changes. And maybe even a bit of bad luck.
Exactly. And just like in real life, those who are most prepared and adaptable are often the ones who thrive. Now, in addition to these random events, the game also introduces action cards that give players some agency, a way to influence events and maybe even tip the scales in their favor.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. What kind of actions are we talking about? Anything particularly devious?
Well, you could use an action card to place your agent in any area on the board, regardless of adjacency. Think of it like having a network of spies ready to infiltrate any part of the city.
That sounds incredibly useful, especially if you're trying to outmaneuver someone like Lord Holdhurst, who's obsessed with controlling specific areas.
Precisely. And then there are cards that let you manipulate those trouble markers. You could remove one from an area you control, creating a haven of stability. Or even place one in an opponent's territory to disrupt their plans.
So you can actively contribute to the chaos, just like Fagin.
In a way, yes. But these cards aren't without risks. Some have negative consequences, like forcing you to take a loan or discard valuable cards. It's all about weighing the potential benefits against the possible drawbacks, much like navigating the treacherous social waters of Victorian London itself.
Speaking of navigating, I'm curious about the specific locations on the game board. Are they just names, or do they offer some unique advantages?
Each area on the board has its own corresponding card. And these city area cards grant players special abilities that can be used once per turn. Think of them as each area having its own unique charm, or shall we say, its own way of bending the rules in your favor.
Now we're talking. What are some examples of these special abilities?
Well, the Chelsea card, for example, allows you to pay a small fee to place an agent in Chelsea or an adjacent area, essentially giving you a shortcut to expanding your influence. Then you have the Westminster card, which lets you draw and discard a card, giving you more control over your options and allowing you to adapt to changing circumstances.
So it's a way to gain an edge to outsmart your opponents and capitalize on opportunities as they arise.
Exactly. And these city area cards add a whole new layer of strategic depth to the game. They encourage players to think carefully about which areas they want to control, not just for their location, but for the unique advantages they offer.
It sounds like this game is more than just a fun way to pass the time. You're actually learning about the history, the geography, and the social dynamics of Victorian London while playing.
That's the brilliant thing about Nanty Narking. It weaves together all these different threads: history, strategy, chance, and even a bit of storytelling to create a truly immersive experience.
Speaking of storytelling, earlier you mentioned other colorful characters. Is there anyone else who stands out?
Well, there's John Nash, the architect, responsible for some of London's most iconic landmarks. In the game, he allows you to construct buildings for a reduced price, reflecting his real-life contribution to shaping the city's landscape.
So he's the master builder, the one who leaves a lasting legacy on the board, just like in real life.
Precisely. And then there's Spring-Heeled Jack, a notorious figure in Victorian folklore, known for his terrifying leaps and fiery breath. In the game, he allows you to move trouble markers around, adding an element of chaos and unpredictability.
So he's a wild card, a mischievous force that embodies the anxieties and urban legends that swirled around Victorian London.
Absolutely. His presence in the game highlights the darker side of Victorian society, the fears and superstitions that lurk beneath the surface of everyday life.
It's amazing how Nanty Narking manages to encapsulate so many different aspects of Victorian London. From its grand architecture to its urban legends, you really get a sense of the city's multifaceted personality.
And we haven't even touched on the Grenadier and New Citizen pawns yet. They add another layer of complexity to the game, representing the forces of law and order and the constant influx of people into the city.
Wait, so there are pawns on the board that aren't controlled by any of the players?
Exactly. The grenadier pawns are placed in areas through certain actions or random events. Their presence makes those areas much harder to control, as they essentially act as the police force, keeping a watchful eye on things.
So it's like having a constant reminder that even the most cunning criminal or ambitious lord can't operate with complete impunity. There are always limits to their power.
Precisely. And then there are the new citizen pawns, which are placed on the board through those unpredictable random events. They represent the constant influx of people into London, adding to the city's diversity and making the game even more unpredictable.
It's like the game is reminding you that you can't control everything, that there are always external forces at play shaping the course of events in unexpected ways.
Exactly. And that, I think, is one of the key insights that Nanty Narking offers. It shows us that Victorian London, just like any major city, was a dynamic, ever-evolving organism, shaped by a complex interplay of forces: ambition, opportunity, chance, and the constant churn of human life.
Wow, this game sounds incredible. It's like stepping into a time machine and experiencing Victorian London firsthand. But for those of us who might never get the chance to actually play Nanty Narking, what are the key takeaways? What can we learn about this era from this board game?
I think the most important takeaway is that Victorian London was a city of incredible contrasts. You had the grandeur of Buckingham Palace and the Houses of Parliament, but just a stone's throw away, you had the poverty and squalor of the East End slums. You had brilliant minds like Sherlock Holmes pushing the boundaries of science and reason. While at the same time, figures like Spring-Heeled Jack embodied the lingering shadows of superstition and fear.
It sounds like a period of immense change and upheaval, where tradition and progress were constantly clashing.
Exactly. And Nanty Narking captures that beautifully. The game forces you to navigate these contrasts, to make choices that reflect the complex realities of Victorian life. Do you try to amass wealth and influence like Monsieur de Sidonia? Or do you strive to maintain order like Sherlock Holmes? Do you exploit the city's underbelly like Fagin? Or do you build something lasting like John Nash?
It's like the game is asking you to define your own role in this historical drama, to grapple with the ethical dilemmas that face Londoners at the time.
Precisely. And in doing so, you gain a deeper appreciation for the challenges and opportunities that shaped Victorian London. You realize that history isn't just a collection of facts and dates. It's a tapestry woven from countless individual stories, each with its own motivations and consequences.
You know, I'm starting to see how a game like Nanty Narking can be more than just entertainment. It's a way to make history come alive, to connect with the past on a personal level.
That's the power of games, isn't it? They can transport us to other worlds, challenge our assumptions, and make us think about things in new ways. And in the case of Nanty Narking, it allows us to step into the shoes of Victorian Londoners and experience their world firsthand.
So even if we never roll the dice or move a pawn on the Nanty Narking board, we can still learn valuable lessons from it.
Absolutely. By understanding the game's mechanics and the historical context it reflects, we gain a deeper insight into the forces that shaped Victorian London. And by extension, the world we live in today. We see how the legacies of the past continue to influence our present, and how the choices we make today can shape the future.
I think that's a brilliant point. It's a reminder that history isn't just something that happened long ago. It's a living, breathing thing that's constantly evolving and shaping our lives.
And sometimes it takes something as unexpected as a board game to bring that point home. Nanty Narking is a testament to the power of games to educate, entertain, and inspire us to see the world in new and unexpected ways.
Well, I think it's safe to say that we've successfully navigated the streets of Victorian London, all thanks to this fascinating board game. It's been an incredible journey full of intrigue, insight, and a newfound appreciation for this pivotal era.
And who knows, maybe this deep dive has inspired you to seek out Nanty Narking and embark on your own Victorian adventure.
I know, I'm certainly tempted. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
London streets, whispers in the air. Shadows move, but no one knows what secrets people bear. Is it fortune? Is it fate? A cunning master plan? In Nanty Narking, every step defines the man. Nanty Narking, where fortunes rise and fall. Schemes and scandals rule them all. When the cards are played and the dice are cast, will you stand or will you be outplayed at last? Gentlemen a deadly game, where a beggar in the morning may be rich by day's end. Who holds power, who holds fate, who controls the night? Under gaslight flickers, truth is lost from sight. Nanty Narking, where fortunes rise and fall, schemes and scandals rule them all. When the cards are played and the dice are cast, will you stand or will you be outplayed at last? Gentlemen and scoundrels play a deadly game, where a beggar in the morning may be rich by day's end. Who holds power, who holds fate, who controls the night? Under gaslight flickers, truth is lost from sight. Nanty Narking, where fortunes rise and fall, schemes and scandals rule them all. When the cards are played and the dice are cast, will you stand or will you be outplayed at last? One bluff, one move, one secret untold. Is it victory or ruin? Only the bold. Nanty Narking, where fortunes rise and fall, schemes and scandals rule them all. When the cards are played and the dice are cast, will you stand or will you be outplayed at last? The night bluff, where city sleeps, silence in the air. Who has won and who has lost? Does fate even care? For in Nanty Narking, one truth remains, a new game begins. The rules never change. The night fades, the city sleeps, silence in the air. Who has won and who has lost? Does fate even care? For in Nanty Narking, one truth remains, a new game begins. The rules never change.